What do you mean we're triple booked for Thursday, and half the vans are down? Wesley James slammed his office door harder than he meant to. The framed photo of his first delivery truck rattled on the wall. He pinched the bridge of his nose and stared across the desk. 18 locations. Over 200 employees. And somehow, his own company, one he bought and rebuilt from the ground up 8 years ago, was starting to feel like a machine he didn't recognize. The operations report in his hand showed rising complaints, missed deliveries, and higher turnover than ever. Especially at the Westfield branch. But every time he asked his district manager, he got the same answer. We're running tight, but nothing we can't handle. That didn't sit right with him. Wesley hadn't been to Westfield since he first bought the company. It was one of the newer branches, opened just 3 years ago. He didn't know the team there personally. With the company expanding fast, most of the recent hires probably wouldn't know him by face. Especially with the beard, longer hair, and a pair of tinted glasses. The plan was simple. He'd pose as a new trainee named Don, shadowing a courier for a few days. He wanted to see what was really going on, not the cleaned-up version he got in reports. He arrived at the Westfield warehouse just past 5 a.m., driving a beat-up sedan and wearing a faded hoodie. The front office barely glanced at him. "New guy?" asked a woman behind the desk, scribbling something on a clipboard.
"Yeah, Don."
"Here for the route shadow."
"Cool."
"You're with Micah," she said, handing him a vest. "He's in Dock 4. Good luck." Micah was already loading crates into a cargo van when Wesley found him. Mid-30s, lean build, tattoos down both arms, and a scowl that looked permanent. He moved fast, every motion sharp and efficient. "You Don?" Micah asked without looking up.
"Yeah."
"Just riding along today." Micah tossed him a pair of gloves. "Then move. We're already behind." Wesley jumped in, helping with the crates. Micah didn't talk much during the first few stops. He drove like someone with hours of pent-up frustration in his chest. By the 6th drop-off, Wesley finally broke the silence. "You always run solo?" Micah laughed bitterly. "Supposed to have a helper. Last 3 weeks?"
"Nada."
"They keep quitting or getting pulled to cover other routes." "What about breaks?" Micah snorted. "What breaks?" At the next stop, Micah hauled a 60-pound box up a flight of stairs by himself. Wesley tried to help but was waved off. "I got it," Micah snapped. "Just don't get in my way." Back in the van, Wesley caught him rubbing his lower back and breathing hard. "You good?" Wesley asked. Micah didn't answer right away. Then he muttered, "You ever get so tired you forget your own name?" Wesley stayed quiet. They hit 12 more stops before noon. At one point, Micah skipped lunch completely, just sipping from a coffee thermos and checking the manifest. His energy shifted around the 14th stop. He got quieter, angrier. By the 17th, he was talking to himself. "This is bull. Absolute bull." At stop 18, the box was mislabeled and the customer angry. Micah apologized twice, but the woman slammed the door in his face anyway. Back in the van, he threw the clipboard hard enough to crack the plastic. "I'm done, man," he muttered. "I swear, one more week of this, I'm gone." Wesley sat still. "You ever feel like no one up top gives a damn?" Micah asked suddenly. "They just pile more on, expect you to eat it with a smile. I've busted my ass for 3 years here. 3 years. No raise. No help.
Got a kid I barely see.
And what do I get? A trainee who can't carry a box." Wesley nodded slowly. "I hear you." Micah shook his head.
"No, man."
You don't. You don't live on Advil with your phone ringing at midnight 'cause someone called out. You don't get told to be a team player while they sit in some air-conditioned office. They sat in silence a while. Wesley stared out the window. Micah wiped his face.
"Sorry.
Didn't mean to dump that on you.
Just."
Long day. "It's okay," Wesley said. "You've earned the right to be pissed." Micah laughed dryly. "You ain't wrong. They finished the last few stops in tired silence. When they pulled back into the warehouse, Micah didn't even wait, just started unloading. Wesley helped until the last crate hit the dock. Then, he turned to Micah. "Listen, man," he said quietly. "Thanks for letting me ride today." "Really?" Micah gave a half nod. "Yeah, no problem." As Wesley walked back to the parking lot, he felt a knot in his stomach. He hadn't expected to hear a courier threaten to quit on his first day undercover. He definitely hadn't expected to feel like the bad guy in the story. But he knew one thing: Micah deserved better. And tomorrow, he'd come back not as a trainee, but as the boss. The next morning, Wesley parked in the same back lot, still wearing the hoodie and jeans, but this time, he wasn't shadowing, he was watching. From the privacy of his car, he had a clear view of the loading bay. Vans rolled out in staggered waves, drivers loading with practice speed, barely speaking to one another. The building exuded urgency, but not energy. It felt strained.
Tight. He checked the time.
It was just past 5:40. The warehouse supervisor was late. Again. Wesley had reviewed the attendance logs the night before. The same name, Keith Maris, had logged in late nearly every day for the past month, but the time cards had been manually edited. Wesley had cross-referenced the building's security logs and found a pattern. Keith was clocking in from his phone remotely, sometimes from as far as 40 miles away. At 6:05, Keith strolled in with a large drink in hand and sunglasses pushed onto his forehead. He stopped just inside the dock doors, chatting with someone from dispatch, laughing about something on his phone. Wesley got out of the car. He walked in through the side entrance, unnoticed at first. Then a younger guy by the lockers looked up and did a double take. Wesley didn't say anything. He just nodded once and kept walking. Keith turned when the footsteps drew closer. "You're not supposed to be back here," he said, squinting. Wesley reached into his pocket and pulled out his wallet. He flipped it open and held up his corporate ID. Keith's face drained of color. "Wait. I'm Wesley James," he said. "Owner." Keith opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Wesley didn't wait. "My office. Now." He led the way through the poorly lit hallway, passing two drivers sitting on overturned crates, both looking like they hadn't slept. One of them muttered something under his breath. Wesley caught the word, useless. Inside the branch office, the air was stale. A stack of unopened mail sat on the corner of the desk. The calendar hadn't been flipped since last month. Wesley closed the door behind them. "How long have you been adjusting your clock-ins remotely?" he asked. Keith shifted. "Look, I answer the question."
Keith blinked.
"A few weeks. I've been driving in from Loganville. It's a long commute. So, you falsified time records instead of asking for an adjusted schedule?" "I didn't think it was a big deal." "It is when people are running double routes while you're still in bed." Keith looked down. "I didn't know things were that bad." "You didn't know because you weren't here." Wesley pulled out a tablet and tapped it. "You've had 4 resignations in the last 10 days. All from your dock crew. 3 cited lack of support and no escalation path. 1 said you never responded to texts." Keith folded his arms. "I've been handling a lot. The new regional systems, those were on me too. I reviewed your actual system usage. You opened the dashboard twice last week. One of those times was to approve your own overtime." Keith's jaw clenched. "You're relieved." "Effective immediately." Keith's mouth dropped. "Come on, man. I've been with the company 6 years. You've been coasting for at least one of those. You're done." Wesley stepped back into the hallway, leaving Keith behind. He didn't look back. He walked through the warehouse, watching the rhythm of the place. A driver bumped into a crate and cursed. Another one was on the phone, arguing with dispatch about a missing address slip. The air was thick with tension. No one looked up when Wesley passed. He found Micah in the far loading lane, bent over a dolly. Micah glanced up. "Dawn?" Wesley nodded. "Not exactly." Micah straightened slowly. "What's going on?" I run this company, Wesley said. I went undercover because I needed to see what was actually happening. Micah let out a short breath. So, that's why you were asking all those questions.
Yeah.
Micah looked away. I said a lot of stuff yesterday. I probably shouldn't have. You said what I needed to hear. Micah tilted his head slightly. So what now? Wesley looked around. Now I rip this branch open and start from the foundation. He spent the next 2 hours walking the floor, talking to drivers, loaders, dispatchers one by one. He didn't interrupt. He listened. Some were cautious. Others had been waiting for someone to finally ask. A route specialist named Tanya explained how she'd been covering 2 territories since her partner quit. Another driver, Cal, was on his 4th straight week without a full day off. Wesley pulled out his phone and called headquarters. I need a temporary field manager sent to Westfield.
Today.
Pull from Atlanta or Macon, I don't care.
Keith's out.
We need someone with operational experience and a working spine. By the time noon rolled around, word had spread. People moved differently. Not faster, but with a kind of alertness. Like they were watching each other now, unsure what came next. In the break room, Wesley sat with 3 couriers over microwaved pasta and bottled water. One of them, a woman named Rena, said she'd been trying to get safety lights repaired in the back lot for months. Dispatch says it's a facility issue. Facilities says it's a regional budget hold. No one calls back. Wesley nodded. It'll be fixed by Friday. She blinked. You serious? Dead serious. After lunch, he joined dispatch. The supervisor there, a wiry man named Dell, was halfway through a call when Wesley stepped in. The whiteboard behind him was cluttered with scribbles, mostly strike-throughs and arrows. The whole board was improvised chaos. Dell hung up and turned. You're the owner?
Yeah.
Dell raised an eyebrow. So you saw it. All of it. Dell looked tired. Then you know this place is hemorrhaging people. I've been pushing reports upstairs for months. I'm not trying to throw Keith under the bus, but he shut down almost every escalation. Said we'd figure it out locally. We didn't. Why didn't you go above him? Dell hesitated. Honestly, I didn't think it'd matter. It does now. That night, Wesley didn't drive back to his hotel. He stayed. He watched the evening shift roll in. He sat on a crate near the freight door, clipboard in hand, and helped 2 rookies match labels to bins. He didn't stop moving until nearly 11. The next morning, he greeted the team in the loading bay before sunrise. No annunciament. No speech. Just a nod, and sleeves rolled up. He pulled Micah aside. I want you off the road for a week. You're shadowing the new interim manager. You know this place better than anyone. I need your eyes on everything. Micah frowned. I'm not management. You are now. Temporary title. Comes with a pay bump. Permanent if you want it. Micah looked stunned. Why me? Because you never stopped caring, even when no one cared back. Micah gave a small nod.
All right.
Where do I start?
Right here, Wesley said.
Watch how people move. Who's struggling? Who's coasting? Tell me the truth every time. Micah looked around the dock. You sure about this? I'm sure we can't keep doing it the old way. As drivers rolled out and the warehouse buzzed into motion, Wesley watched the faces. Not all of them were convinced. But some were. A few were even hopeful. It wasn't fixed. Not yet. But it had finally started. By the 4th day of Wesley's stay at the Westfield branch, the tension had shifted. Not disappeared, nothing vanished that fast but shifted. There was less edge in the air and more watching. Cautious watching. Employees were waiting to see if change would stick, or if it was just noise before things settled back into silence. The interim manager, Rena, had arrived late the 2nd day. She was sharp, quiet, and didn't waste time trying to win anyone over. She asked short questions, took notes in a leather-bound pad, and didn't pretend to understand the branch's dynamics after a few walkthroughs. That made people trust her faster than if she'd come in playing expert. Micah had taken to his new temporary role with visible discomfort, but he showed up early every morning and stayed late, shadowing every department without making a show of it. Wesley noticed how drivers started asking him small questions, not like he was management, but like he might actually have answers. By midweek, Wesley had quietly moved his workspace into the side office Keith used before his termination. He kept the door open. Not symbolic, just practical. It was the only way to hear what was actually happening. Late Thursday morning, Wesley was reviewing route data when a knock came at the doorframe. Tanya, the route specialist, stood with her hand still raised. "You've got a minute?" Wesley set the tablet down. "Come in." She stepped inside, shutting the door behind her. She looked tired, but composed. Her uniform was clean, hair pulled back tight, and she stood like someone who had to stay braced for impact. "I need to tell you something," she said. "It's about how route adjustments have been handled the last few months." Wesley leaned forward slightly. "Go on." "So when drivers call in sick or quit midweek, we're supposed to redistribute based on proximity and volume, right?" "Yes." "Well, Keith stopped using the system. He told us to reassign manually, said it was faster. But he wasn't doing it evenly. He was pushing almost everything to 3 or 4 people. Micah was one of them. Others barely got touched." Wesley frowned. "Why?" "He said those guys could handle it. But I think there was more to it. One of the drivers, Nate, used to push back when Keith tried to cut his hours. They had words a few times. After that, Nate barely got full routes anymore. And there were other patterns too." "What kind of patterns?" Tanya hesitated. "The guys who stayed quiet, who didn't complain, they got buried. And the ones who mouthed off or challenged decisions. Suddenly they had half days, or were sent home early for rotation. I logged everything. I didn't know who to send it to." "Do you have those records?" She pulled a folded paper from her back pocket. "I printed a summary. I kept the originals at home." Wesley took the page. It was a grid of route assignments by name and date. The imbalance was obvious. "You did the right thing bringing this in." Tanya exhaled. "I just want this place to function. I'm tired of watching good people burn out while others coast." "Has this affected safety?" "Absolutely. I've flagged overages in drive time. Some couriers have been exceeding their legal hours. They're too tired to even notice." Wesley stood. "I'll handle it. Starting now." That afternoon, Wesley called an unannounced meeting with Raina, Tanya, Micah, and Dell from dispatch. They met in the break room, which still smelled faintly of reheated rice and coolant from a nearby compressor. Wesley laid the printed grid on the table. "This is what we've been operating under. It's unacceptable, and it stops today." He turned to Dell. "Any driver over 8 hours on the road in a given shift gets flagged. Immediate review. No exceptions. I want a daily report on my desk." Dell nodded. "Understood. Tanya, you're reinstating automated route balancing. No more manual overrides unless approved by Raina or myself. Clear?" "Yes." Wesley faced Micah. "You've been carrying more than your share. That ends now. Effective Monday, you're rotating between desk and field, 2 days in each. I want you fresh enough to see the full picture." Micah nodded slowly.
"All right."
Raina closed her pad. "I'll start reviewing past assignments. If there's retaliation in the pattern, I'll send a report to HR for formal audit." Wesley looked at each of them. Nobody here deserves to be punished for doing their job well. That kind of culture ends now. Just before the meeting broke up, Dell cleared his throat. "There's something else you should know," he said. "One of our loaders, Luis, he's been getting grief from another guy, Parker. It started with dumb stuff. Comments about his accent, mocking the way he talks. But it's been getting worse." Wesley's face tightened. "Has anything been reported?" Luis didn't want to say anything, said it would make things worse. But yesterday, Parker shoved a bin into his leg and laughed when it knocked him over. Said maybe he should go back to where he came from if he couldn't handle it. Wesley didn't speak for a moment. Then he turned to Raina. Fine, Parker. Bring him to the office.
Now.
Less than 15 minutes later, Parker stood in front of Wesley's desk. Early 30s, muscular build, arms crossed tight. His expression was casual, but his foot tapped fast against the tile. Wesley didn't ask him to sit. I'm going to ask you one question. Did you deliberately shove a bin into another employee and make derogatory comments about his background? Parker shrugged. It was a joke. People are too sensitive. Wesley's voice didn't rise. You're done here. Effective immediately. Parker blinked. Are you serious? You physically assaulted a coworker and made racist comments. You're lucky we're not calling the police. Parker scoffed. You're throwing me out over one joke?
You were given a job.
Not a license to humiliate people. You're not welcome in my company. Security will walk you out. Wesley turned to Raina. Make sure Luis knows this was taken seriously. And log the incident with HR. Parker tried to speak again, but Raina was already at the door. After Parker was gone, Wesley sat back, hands folded. The room was quiet. Later that evening, as vans returned and drivers clocked out, Wesley stayed near the dock. He didn't want a speech. He didn't want applause. He just wanted to be visible. Luis passed by, his limp barely noticeable now. He looked surprised to see Wesley standing near the lockers. You all right? Wesley asked. Luis nodded, eyes guarded. I heard what happened, Wesley said. It won't happen again. Luis looked away. Okay. No, Wesley said. Not okay. You deserve to be safe at work.
You don't have to put up with that.
Ever. Luis gave a small nod and kept walking. Around 9, after most of the branch had cleared out, Raina stepped into the side office. You made an impact today. Wesley didn't look up from his notes. Not enough. It's a start. He finally looked up. We've got to rebuild trust. That means showing up, listening, and backing people when it counts. Not just once. Raina glanced out the window where the last van was backing into its bay. They're watching. Every move. Good, Wesley said. So am I. He didn't leave the branch that night until long after the last light in the warehouse flicked off. By the following Monday, the branch operated with a quiet sense of recalibration. The warehouse still hummed with early morning urgency, but the tone had shifted. Not toward celebration, no one had time for that, but toward alertness. People were watching each other, not in fear, but in cautious hope. The absenteeism hadn't vanished, and the roster still ran thin in some departments, but the behavior that once passed unnoticed now drew attention. Wesley arrived just after 5, stepping into the loading bay with a clipboard in hand. He didn't say much. He simply observed. A new loader, Esteban, was struggling with crate alignment along Dock 2. 2 weeks earlier, that would have drawn a sarcastic comment from one of the senior guys. Today, another employee quietly stepped in beside him and showed him where the tie-down system was failing. Micah, now rotating between field and office, stood near the dock entrance reviewing route manifests. He looked more rested, but still carried the weight of someone who didn't let himself relax too deeply. Wesley walked up beside him. You think the new system's holding? Micah tapped a pen against his notepad. Mostly. There's still a gap on Route 12. Rena's been getting shorted on help since Friday. Her van's been flagged twice for overloading. Why wasn't it reassigned? Dell said he was waiting on a new hire to clear background. Should have been on board by now. Wesley turned toward the dispatch window. Let's go check. Inside the dispatch office, Dell was finishing a call. His voice was level, but his eyes flicked toward the door as Wesley entered. He hung up and spun his chair slightly. That about the onboarding delay? Micah nodded once. Rena's vans stacked again. Del pulled up the hiring portal on his tablet. New guy passed all checks Friday. But HR flagged an address discrepancy. Said they needed a second proof of residence. Wesley raised an eyebrow. And I sent them his pay stub from the warehouse job he left. Should have cleared it. Haven't heard back. Wesley took out his phone. What's his name? Trevor Langley. Wesley called the HR director directly. After a brief back and forth, the issue became clear. The address discrepancy was a typo in the system. Someone had entered Lane instead of Langley. The form had been sitting in limbo since Friday because no one had double-checked it manually. He ended the call. He's cleared. Get him in today. Del nodded and typed rapidly. Back in the hallway, Micah leaned against the wall. That's 2 days of extra weight Rena didn't need. I'll handle it, Wesley said. He found Rena out back, loading the final few crates into her vehicle. Her expression was tight, her hair pulled into a low knot that had started to come undone. She didn't notice him until he crossed into the lot. You should have told me, he said. She turned. Told you what? That you've been overloaded for 3 days straight. I saw the van manifest. Her eyes narrowed slightly. I figured it wouldn't matter. It does now. Rena leaned against the van's side panel, arms crossed. I'm not trying to complain. I just don't want to fall behind. If I say I can't handle it, it feels like I'm giving someone an excuse to cut my hours. You're not going to get penalized for being honest. She looked away. That's not how it worked before. It's how it works now. You'll have a second set of hands starting tomorrow. Until then, you only take what you can safely carry. Rena exhaled. If you say so. I do. As she drove off, Wesley made a note on his clipboard. Then he walked through the back hallway toward the maintenance room. 2 of the overhead dock doors had been sticking, and the facility report showed they'd been malfunctioning for weeks. Inside, a technician named Arlo stood on a stepladder, replacing a pulley. He was an older man, late 50s, with calloused hands and a voice like gravel. You working on door 6? Wesley asked. Been working on it since last Thursday. Parts were backordered. Is it functional now? Close. But there's a bigger issue. The motor's been overheating. It's rated for half the cycles we're putting it through. Why wasn't that flagged earlier? Arlo climbed down. I mentioned it to Keith twice. He told me to make it work. Wesley didn't answer. He just made another note. Replace the unit. Full upgrade. Pull from the emergency budget if needed. Arlo gave a small nod. About time. That afternoon, when the last wave of vans returned, Wesley conducted one-on-ones. He sat in the break room, no clipboard, no tablet. Just a chair across from a folding table and an open seat. Tanya came in first. She brought a stack of route sheets. Wesley gestured for her to sit. You've been handling more than just assignments. She nodded. Someone had to. You interested in taking on a formal lead role? Not just on paper. Actual authority. Oversight on route logistics, local dispatch integration, and system calibration. Tanya blinked. You serious? I don't offer jobs as jokes. She leaned back slightly. Then yes. Effective next Monday. You'll report directly to Rena, but you'll have full discretion over all route adjustments. I'll make the announcement tomorrow. The next meeting was with Luis. He walked in hesitantly, sitting on the edge of the chair. I wanted to check in, Wesley said. Luis looked down. I'm good. Been quieter lately. You've got a stable team around you now. But I don't want quiet to mean ignored. You let me know if anything feels off. Directly. Luis nodded once. Thanks. Outside the break room, the hallway buzzed with the usual end-of-day movement. Wesley stepped out as Del approached from the dispatch window. We got a problem with one of the new trainees, Del said quietly. Guy named Brent. 3 separate complaints in 2 days. 1 from a loader, 1 from a driver, and 1 from Tanya. Wesley's expression hardened. What kind of complaints?
Condescending attitude.
Dismissive of instructions. Made a comment about Tanya needing a man to sort the heavy crates. Then laughed it off. Wesley didn't hesitate. Where is he? Warehouse floor. Dock 3. Wesley headed straight there. Brent was loading bins onto a dolly, earbuds in, moving without urgency. Wesley stopped a few feet away and waited until Brent noticed him. You, Brent? The young man pulled out one earbud. Yeah. Wesley kept his voice even. You've had 3 complaints in 2 days. Disrespect to coworkers. Gender-based remarks. Ignoring direct instructions. Brent rolled his eyes. People here are uptight. You can't even joke anymore without someone crying foul. You're not being written up. You're being dismissed. Effective immediately. Brent straightened. Wait, what? You don't get a second chance to make people feel unsafe or disrespected. Turn in your vest and badge. Brent opened his mouth, then closed it. He pulled the vest off and dropped it on the crate beside him. Wesley signaled to security and walked away without another word. That evening, Wesley gathered the core staff in the warehouse. No speech, no announcement, just a circle of folding chairs and a few late cups of coffee. I'm heading back to HQ tomorrow, he said, but Raina's staying on through the quarter. Micah will continue in dual capacity, and Tanya's stepping into a formal lead role. He paused, letting that settle. I didn't come here to make a scene. I came to see what I let slip. I saw people carrying too much, being ignored, and wondering if anyone above them cared. That's on me. No one spoke, but no one looked away either. This place isn't fixed. It's recovering. That's a different kind of work. You don't rush it. You show up for it. Every day. He stood. You've got a long way to go. But you've also got the right people to get there. As they filed out, Micah lingered at the door. You really going back tomorrow?
Yeah.
You gonna vanish like most execs?
No.
I'll be watching the numbers, the reports. But I'll also be back. Unannounced or not, I'll be back. Micah gave a brief nod. Fair enough. Wesley left the branch just after 10. The lot was mostly empty. The building stood quiet behind him. Not perfect, not painless, but finally pointed in the right direction.